Hello, I'm Christopher. Today, we are looking at 6 cases where people got too close to crocodilians and never walked away the same. From a wildlife influencer who waded onto a riverbank in Australia to lure a saltwater crocodile toward her camera, to a young creator who paid a zoo guard $60 to leave a gate unlocked in Venezuela. But first, we start in Florida, where a woman set up a camera one night next to a caiman she had raised from a hatchling to film a comeback video that nobody would ever see. On March 19, 2016, Hillsborough County, Florida was hot, still, and quiet past midnight, and that was the night Jordan Reeves, known online as Jordy, sat down next to a 6-foot crocodilian in her backyard and switched the camera on for one last time. Jordy was 28, running a social media brand built around a spectacled caiman she called Chompy, with a small but growing following drawn to the idea of someone keeping a crocodilian as a pet. Before the channel, she had spent 4 years as a vet technician at an exotic animal clinic outside Tampa, before being fired for breaking safety rules. After losing the job, she turned what she knew into content and became a full-time influencer. Chompy had been bought illegally through an unlicensed dealer when it was barely a foot long. By early 2016, she had 8,000 followers. Florida Wildlife had cited her twice for keeping the animal without a permit. She paid both fines and kept filming. What her followers never knew was that Chompy had bitten her 3 separate times in the year before, March 2016. None of it was ever mentioned publicly. That detail alone should have changed everything. Getting bitten 3 times and telling nobody is not the behavior of someone who was scared. It is the behavior of someone who had convinced themselves the bites did not count. The enclosure was a converted above-ground pool with about 18 inches of water and a small concrete ledge. No deep areas, no shade, nothing that let the animal feel hidden. Specialists who reviewed the setup later described it as an environment that kept the caiman in constant defensive tension. Jordy read Chompy's stillness as calmness, but in reality, it was not calmness. It was an animal with nowhere to go. By early 2016, 2 sponsorships had been dropped, and her view counts were falling. She announced a comeback video was coming. What investigators learned from a friend who had visited the property in the weeks before was that Chompy had not been fed on his regular schedule. Jordy had told her she was waiting until after the video was filmed to get back on track, too focused on planning and logistics to keep up with the feeding routine. A caiman that goes without regular feeding enters a heightened state of opportunistic alertness. Combined with the chronic stress of the enclosure, routine movement near the water surface became a trigger. This is the part that gets overlooked every time. It does not matter how long you have had the animal. It does not matter how many times you have fed it by hand. Wild animals do not become something else because you gave them a name. The biology stays exactly the same. That night, she carried her tripod into the backyard, settled onto the low concrete edge, and reached her hand toward the water just past 1:30 at night. The spectacled caiman, Caiman crocodilis, reaches 5 to 7 feet at full size. Its bite can generate roughly 500 to 900 psi of force, enough to fracture bone and cause severe facial injury. Its strike is a fast reflex, triggered by movement and vibration at the water surface, meaning close-range motion alone is often enough to provoke an attack. Chompy went fully underwater before her hand reached the surface. When her hand broke the water, he launched in one fast sideways burst. The bite caught her across the right cheekbone and eye socket, fracturing the bone and severing branches of the facial artery. He held, shifted his weight, and released. Jordy fell face forward into the pool. She landed face down in 18 inches of water. Blood loss dropped her blood pressure fast. Blood from the wound blocked her airway from the inside. She could not push herself up. The water was only 18 inches deep. She was not dragged under. She simply could not get back up. The camera ran until the battery died before dawn. A friend arrived the next morning. Cause of death was recorded as traumatic shock with secondary drowning following severe facial soft tissue injury. Law enforcement collected the footage as evidence. Under Florida's public records law, video held in an open case file is exempt from public release. The recording has never been made available. Chompy was euthanized 4 days later. Jordy's case was added to an enforcement file that had been building for years. It was not the first. It would not be the last. The state had warned her twice. She paid both fines and changed nothing. At some point, a fine stops being a warning and starts being a price. Geordie had decided the price was worth it, until it wasn't. What came next was different. In Australia's Northern Territory, a woman with thousands of followers was preparing to wade into a tidal river and lure one of the largest crocodilians on Earth toward her camera. The animal had ruled that river for decades. She had been in the country for 3 weeks. On April 17, 2015, the East Alligator River in Australia's Northern Territory sat murky and still in the late afternoon heat. That was the day Cassandra Mears stepped off a small tin boat at Cahill's Crossing and walked toward the water's edge with her camera running. Cassie was 29, running a YouTube channel and Instagram page with just under 9,000 followers, built around close encounters with dangerous animals. Before the channel, she had spent several years at a small regional wildlife education center, running presentations on reptiles and birds of prey. She genuinely wanted to make dangerous animals feel less threatening to ordinary people. To push that idea further, she quit and started creating content full-time. The problem was that the videos pulling the most views were always the ones where she was closest to the animal. Every time the gap shrank, the numbers went up. And every time the numbers went up, the gap shrank further. Every upload was a small bet that the next one would be safe too. The odds never changed, only the stakes did. She had spent 4 days filming from a small tin boat along quieter stretches of river south of the main visitor zone. Then, on April 16th, a video close to a juvenile crocodile pulled strong numbers overnight. The next morning, she moved toward Cahill's Crossing, one of the most consistently active crocodile locations in the region, framing the trip publicly as a wildlife observation session. The saltwater crocodile is the largest living reptile on Earth. A fully grown male typically reaches 10 to 13 feet and can weigh between 900 and 1,500 pounds. In tidal river systems, crocodiles may position themselves in shallower margins where prey is more concentrated. They are highly stealthy ambush predators, and in many attacks, the strike is the first moment the target becomes aware of the threat. Cassie stood on the low sandbank with her camera pointed at the water. The crocodile gave no warning and stayed completely hidden just below the surface. In a sudden burst, it surged out of the water and grabbed her. She was pulled into the river almost immediately. Once in the water, it began a powerful twisting motion with its body, a spinning death roll used to control the prey, disorient it, and help drag it under. Within seconds, she was fully submerged. That is what people miss when they hear about moments like this. It does not build. It does not give anyone time to respond. It is over before the person watching has processed what they are seeing. Cassie's body was recovered 36 hours later, nearly 1,000 feet downstream. The cause of death was recorded as traumatic asphyxiation, severe drowning, and crushing injuries to the torso and limbs. The camera recovered at the river's edge was taken by Northern Territory Police as part of a coronial investigation. Under Australian coronial law, footage depicting a fatality cannot be publicly released while the inquest remains open. The recording has never been made available. And what stays with me about this is how it didn't come down to one big mistake. It was a series of small steps that slowly brought a person too close to something that never changed what it was. Each decision felt small in the moment, but the danger was always the same in the background. One moment, everything seems fine, and the next moment it isn't, and by then, it's already too late to fix it. Cassie had no research permit, no formal credentials, and no authorization to be at that crossing. The next story belongs to someone who had all of those things. A PhD in herpetology, years of published field research, and over 200 documented safe captures. She still did not come back from the lagoon. October 9th, 2016, South Africa, near the Kruger region. No moon, no wind, just a cloudy sky, and whatever your headlamp could reach. That was the night Marisol Vega stepped out alone to check on an animal she had worked with for months and did not get back in. Marisol was 34, from Bogota, Colombia. She ran a crocodile-focused blog and field footage series called Croc Whisperer Diaries, documenting her Nile crocodile research work to a large online following. Before becoming a full-time creator, she had earned a PhD in herpetology and worked on a Nile crocodile population study through a regional conservation NGO and a private eco-lodge. One animal appeared in her blog more than any other, a female Nile crocodile, just over 10 feet long, that the team called Limping Lil, named after the way she dragged her left rear leg on land. Marisol had been part of 2 team captures of Lil without incident. Both followed standard multi-handler procedures, with the animal fully restrained before any close contact. I want to stop here for a second, because this is important. Everything described so far is a person doing their job correctly. Team captures, proper restraint, clean record. None of that is the problem. The problem starts the moment she decided to go out alone. In her blog on October 8th, she described Lil as showing the lowest disturbance level of any female in the group. That assessment was based on handling sessions where the animal was fully restrained. Behavior under restraint does not reliably predict how a crocodile responds when free and approached at the water's edge in the dark. That evening, she told her field assistant they would run a spotlight survey before dawn to locate Lil and mark the site for a team capture the following morning. The assistant would manage the vehicle and spotlight from the track. Marisol would log positions from a bank-adjacent point. Bank-adjacent means standing back with clear sightlines. It does not mean closing the distance to an unrestrained animal at the edge of a crocodile lagoon in near total darkness. What bothers me is how small that gap is between what she said she was going to do and what she actually did. She told her assistant one thing. The footprints at the lagoon edge told a different story. That distance between the plan and the decision she made in the dark alone is where this whole story lives. What investigators pieced together the following morning suggested she had moved to the water's edge rather than staying at a setback position. Lil was resting on a low mud flat at the lagoon's margin. The Nile crocodile is the second largest reptile on Earth. A female at just over 10 feet weighs between 300 and 500 pounds, capable of fast, short-distance lunges from resting positions. Their response to close approach does not build gradually. Prior handling under restraint has no bearing on how an unrestrained wild animal responds to proximity in open terrain at night. Based on scene evidence, the attack likely occurred at or near the mudflat's edge. The blood pattern, drag marks, and condition of the remains recovered were consistent with a crocodile bite and death roll. The blood loss produced by that kind of attack in that location is not survivable without immediate intervention. There was none. The issue is, those two previous captures gave Marisol real data about Lil's behavior under full restraint. They told her nothing about what Lil would do unrestrained on a mudflat in darkness. The distinction between those two situations is the entire story. The field assistant found her headlamp still lit on the bank, blood across the mud, flat, disturbed soil, and drag marks leading into the water. A search launched at first light recovered partial remains along the lagoon's margins later that day. Investigators concluded the evidence was consistent with a crocodile attack, though the exact sequence could not be reconstructed without witnesses or recording equipment. She had not been carrying a camera. There was nothing to review and nothing to release. Her field notes and blog entries were examined as part of a safety audit of the program's survey protocols. The Eco Lodge faced scrutiny over the absence of documented procedures governing solo exit from vehicles near active water. The strangest part is that her PhD was in herpetology. She knew exactly what Nile crocodiles were capable of. That knowledge did not stop her from walking toward one in the dark. It just made her feel like it was a calculated risk, rather than a blind one. Marisol had credentials, permits, and years of field experience. One bad judgment call in the dark cost everything. The next story involves someone with none of that. A private reptile property in Florida, an American crocodile, and a woman who walked. January 22nd, 2014, Florida. 43 degrees, cold, and still. Most people were already inside for the night. Tatiana Volkov arrived at a private exotic reptile property on the outskirts of the city just after midnight with a key she had been given and a plan she had been working toward for weeks. Tatiana was 26, born in Russia, living in Florida for 2 years. She had almost 5.5 thousand followers built around one brand, Gator Queen Tatiana. Photos and short clips posing near alligators at a private property running well outside Florida licensing requirements. No formal wildlife training, and not a licensed handler. Her boyfriend had worked there until recently. His access key was never officially deactivated. She had used it before, always during the day. I want to be honest before this goes further. What she did was really stupid. She built a real audience in a foreign country from nothing, But understanding audiences and understanding a 12-foot predator are completely different things, and she had confused one for the other. The property held crocodilians of varying sizes. The largest was a mature American crocodile between 11 and 12 feet, kept in a restricted holding area. Every time she walked away, safe had nothing to do with skill. It just meant nothing had happened yet. Those are not the same thing. American crocodiles are among the larger crocodilian species, with mature males typically reaching 11 to 13 feet in length. Their jaws generate significant force. Cold reduces overall activity, but does not predictably reduce the mechanical output of a bite. Physical contact with an animal of this size carries serious injury risk, regardless of temperature. Her boyfriend stayed near the vehicle outside. He stated he believed she was photographing from outside the enclosures. When he heard sounds from inside, he came toward the building and found he could not access the restricted intersection. He called 911, and this is the part I cannot get past. He worked there. He knew what was inside those pens. He understood better than almost anyone what an 11-foot crocodilian means in an enclosed space at night, and he still drove her there and handed over the key. There is a difference between not knowing something is dangerous and knowing exactly how dangerous it is. He was on the wrong side of that line. Based on where she was found and the physical evidence, it appeared she had entered the service area and reached a confined area housing the large male. The water level was estimated at around 20 inches. What specifically happened inside could not be reconstructed. Injury patterns were consistent with contact involving the upper body, but the sequence of events was not determinable from the evidence available. Injuries were consistent with compressive force to the chest and direct bite trauma to the arm. The position she was found in was consistent with drowning following incapacitation. Cause of death was recorded as consistent with drowning in association with bite injuries and hemorrhage. Emergency services arrived at 1:10 a.m. Animal control was needed before responders could safely enter the area. By the time Tatiana was reached, she was already gone. Her phone was recovered at the scene. Investigators reviewed available recordings. No material was released publicly. Authorities declined, citing the active investigation. The full extent of the property's permitting failures was not established until investigators entered after the incident. The operation had been functioning with inadequate state permits and no federal authorization for authorities. I keep thinking about how much knowledge was in that situation and how none of it mattered. She knew the layout, he knew the animals, the facility knew what it was holding illegally. All of that information was there, and not one piece of it stopped what happened on January 22nd. The next story is the opposite of this one. Someone who spent 12 days doing everything right, then stepped out of cover for 20 seconds with her back turned, near a nest less than 48 hours from hatching. August 30th, 2017, Ranthambore National Park, Rajasthan. Monsoon season, sky darkening by early afternoon. That was the day Priya Chandrasekhar stepped out of her hide and walked toward a nest she had spent 12 days convincing herself was safe. Priya was 31, from Mumbai. She had built a growing audience online through wildlife documentaries. Her content was serious and well-researched, and that credibility was exactly what had earned her a Young Explorer grant from a small private conservation foundation to document the maternal behavior of mugger crocodiles. Before the channel, she had produced 2 well-received wildlife short films. She knew the field, and she knew how to present herself within it, but she also had a firm view that muggers were considerably less aggressive than saltwater or Nile crocodiles, particularly around nesting behavior, and she had held that view long enough that it had stopped feeling like an opinion and started feeling like a fact. And that is where everything starts, not at the nest, not on August 30th, right there. She had made up her mind about that animal before she ever arrived at Ranthambore, and nothing across 12 days of filming gave her a reason to question it. She arrived at Ranthambore in mid-August with filming permits. A female mugger had built a nest in a marshy section of the lake's northern margin. Park staff had marked a safety boundary around the site. Priya set up her hide at the permitted observation point roughly 60 feet from the nest. The footage was workable, but not close enough for the detail she needed. Over the following days, her confidence in the animal's stillness grew alongside her frustration with the distance. For 12 days, she filmed without incident. The female remained consistently present near the nest, sometimes partially submerged, sometimes shifting position on the bank, but never once reacting to Priya's presence at the observation point. On August 29th, Priya noted in her journal that the animal appeared to allow her presence and showed no active defensive behavior. A mugger crocodile, sitting still near its nest for 12 days, is not a habituated animal. It is a nesting female, conserving energy in the final days before hatching. The stillness is not comfort, it is preparation. That afternoon, a rain shower moved through cutting visibility across the area and shifting her camera on its tripod. Priya left the hide to reposition it, and in the reduced visibility, closed to within roughly 30 feet of the nest edge. The nest had been constructed in late July, putting it well into final incubation, the period when maternal reactivity peaks. Think about that for a second. 12 days of correct distance, careful notes, and proper protocol. Then, a rain shower shifts a camera on a tripod, and she walks out to fix it. That's the reason she was standing 30 feet from that nest. Not a bold decision, not a moment of overconfidence. A camera that needed repositioning in the rain. The most ordinary reason imaginable. The mugger crocodile reaches 8 to 10 feet at full adult size and can weigh between 150 and 400 pounds. On land, they are capable of short, explosive bursts of movement. Nesting females are highly defensive and may display warning behaviors such as hissing or head lifting, but in low visibility conditions like heavy rain, these signals can be difficult to detect, and defensive escalation can occur very quickly once a nest is approached. The female charged from the bank. In the rain and low visibility, Priya had no meaningful time to react. The impact knocked her off her feet. The bite caught her across the lower abdomen, compressing major abdominal vessels and soft tissue. She was dragged toward the water. A park ranger on patrol along the northern track noticed the disturbance and radioed for backup. Rangers reached the site within a few minutes. Priya could not be located in the water that evening. Her body was found the following morning, wedged under submerged roots at the lake margin. The cause of death was internal hemorrhage combined with drowning. The camera had been positioned to capture the nest and recorded nothing of the attack. There was nothing to withhold. The Conservation Foundation published an internal safety review after the incident. It was not made public. The nest hatched successfully 11 days later. What kept me wondering about this one is those 12 days. Every day without incident made the next one feel more manageable. 12 days of nothing built the confidence that made her walk toward that nest on day 13. The crocodile was not changing across those 12 days, but Priya was. Priya had permits, a grant, and 2 weeks of field observation. She went through every official channel to be there. What comes next is the opposite. In Venezuela, a 23-year-old with no credentials and no permit handed a night guard $60 to leave a gate unlocked and walked into an enclosure holding one of the rarest crocodilians on Earth. It was July 4th, 2018, and the small zoo on the outskirts of a Venezuelan city was closed for its afternoon staff break. That was the day Kendra Lomax, known online as Kiki, used an unlocked gate and walked straight in. Kiki was 23, from Ohio, and had built a following across Instagram and musical.ly by sneaking into animal facilities and filming what she called the truth about captivity. She had no formal background in wildlife or animal behavior. What she had was a firm belief that captive, large reptiles were psychologically broken, adjusted to human presence, and no longer capable of real aggression. She had volunteered at small sanctuaries, handled juvenile reptiles, and spent years around captive facilities. She had just decided that what she had seen was representative of all of it. That is the part that is difficult to move past. It was not ignorance, it was a certainty. And certainty in the wrong direction is far more dangerous than not knowing anything at all. Kiki had arrived in Venezuela 3 days earlier, posing as a wildlife photography student. The zoo was severely underfunded, its staff reduced to a skeleton crew, its single overnight guard working for a salary that Venezuelan hyperinflation had made nearly worthless. She offered him $60. In mid-2018, that sum was equivalent to several months of effective income. The gate was left unlocked. Think about what that exchange actually was. She paid $60 for access to a critically endangered crocodile in an unsupervised enclosure with no safety equipment and no backup. That was the budget for this plan. $60. The enclosure held a male Orinoco crocodile the staff called Cesar. During the midday closure, Kiki climbed the outer fence, crossed the viewing barrier, and lowered herself into the shallow edge of the enclosure pond, carrying a raw chicken piece she had brought. She was recording audio on her phone. Cesar was visible at the surface, eyes up, almost motionless. Here is what gets missed every time someone describes a captive crocodile as docile. Motionless is not passive. A crocodilian holding position at the surface with its eyes up is doing exactly what it is built to do. That stillness is not disengagement. It is the default posture of an ambush predator. Caesar had lived at the zoo for years and was used to seeing people near the water. He no longer backed away when humans came close. But being used to people did not make him tame or safe. The workers often fed him near the edge of the pond, so movement near the water could make him think food was coming. The Orinoco crocodile is critically endangered, with fewer than 1,500 individuals left in the wild. Adult males exceed 13 feet and can weigh over 600 pounds. They are ambush predators that strike from still positions at the waterline with explosive forward momentum and almost no warning movement. She waded to within a few feet and extended the chicken toward the water. Caesar did not retreat. He launched forward and clamped down on her left thigh and lower abdomen in a single motion. She was in roughly 28 inches of water and could not pull free. The bite caused catastrophic crushing trauma to the upper thigh and pelvic region, with severe arterial bleeding that could not be controlled without immediate surgical intervention. The guard later said he heard shouting from somewhere near the reptile section. When he reached there, he found her face down near the edge of the pond, still barely breathing. He pulled her clear using a hooked pole from outside the enclosure barrier, but could not stop the bleeding. She died at the scene at 2:28 p.m. The nearest ambulance was 45 minutes away. Her phone had been recording a voice memo throughout. Venezuelan authorities collected it during the initial scene review. The investigation was closed without charges, citing insufficient resources for a formal proceeding. The recording was never made public. Caesar was transferred to a closed-access conservation facility in the months that followed. What kept me wondering is how many enclosures she had entered before this one. Every exit she made from those places told her the same thing, that she had it figured out. Caesar was just the first animal that disagreed.